Kinesiology 223, Chapter 9, Book Presentation 4. This presentation talks a lot about and kind of speaks to norms. And norms itself, they're behavioral expectations within a group, and I talked a little bit about them in the previous presentation, but it's a level of performance, a pattern of behavior, a belief, and they can be formally established or informally developed by a group kind of organically. And I would say that in some regards, they could also just be like behavioral artifacts within a group structure, much like I was told to run out to practice, not walk out to practice. Within the process of implementing or introducing group norms, you can have positive or negative reinforcement or positive negative pressure can be applied for behavior modification. And what your goal is trying to minimize the poor behavior and then maximize or increase positive behavior. And the book kind of goes into relevancy or if it's irrelevant. And in some regards, it becomes a conversation of what is relevant and what is irrelevant. At UW, we did a stupid skit night, which really had no relevancy to team building or anything else. It was like one of the more disgusting displays of one-upmanship I've ever been involved in my life. And, with that skit night, all it did was serve to basically haze the new players. That's all it was. It wasn't anything to have like any kind of cohesion or create a team environment. And, they actually got rid of that process years ago, thankfully. But, in terms of relevancy, it had no relevancy. So when you talk about group norms, you want your group norms to tie into the very structure of your organization, whether it's the football team or tie into the very structure of a subgroup on a football team, like defensive backs, linebackers, or wide receivers. And these norms, are kind of expectations that you as a position coach can put into place. As a wide receiver group, we're not only going to catch footballs, but we're going to catch, turn, and get 10 yards with every single catch that we make. You start barking it out to your athletes at practice, they just don't catch and stop. They catch and get 10 yards. I mean, they still have a mindset of having yards after catch. And as a wide receiver group, we're going to block downfield, and we're going to be aggressive in our blocking, and we're going to help our ball carrier, whoever it is, if it's one of ours, or if it's the running back, or if it's the quarterback, we're going to block downfield until the whistle. I mean, that's a cultural type of thing. That is a level of performance that you're implementing as a coach and a pattern of behavior as a coach that really belies or supports a mindset of toughness and aggressiveness within your wide receiver group. So I will tell you, you can articulate that message, and many times that's a message that's articulated within a group structure or a subgroup structure, like a wide receiver, linebacker, defensive back, running back, offensive line. Those are like little norms that you can put in place. So the norm for productivity, it's a standard for effort and performance accepted by the team, but also it would be within your team group as well. And it's a norm for productivity. Now, this is kind of a self-regulating process that's done by the team. And you'll see coaches will grade out their offensive linemen or grade out their linebackers. And there's a really wonderful video on this that I'm going to actually link out to. So bear with me for one moment. On our presentation today, if it doesn't, you have the text on the bottom to help you out. But in this example, they take Nick Saban, who was the coach of Alabama for a number of years, widely regarded as one of the most successful coaches in college. And he speaks to the choices you have to either accept or not accept excellence, and how when you have a group culture that is tolerant of inadequacy or conversely not tolerant of mediocre behavior, you'll have a different response. Listen to this and how he articulates this. I hope it comes through. just love that in terms of like mediocrity and being accepting of that on a team. And if you're a coach that sets the norm for productivity and sets the expectation with your athletes, you set the expectation with your current teammates, and as new people come in, you create this culture that actually starts to gain traction more and more and more. There's a book by Jim Collins from years ago called Good to Great. And in that book, he talks about the flywheel concept. And the flywheel concept is it takes a lot of effort to get that flywheel moving. But once that flywheel is moving at a high rate of speed, meaning if you were to juxtaposition that with culture, your culture is moving and operating at a very high level, it takes less effort to keep that flywheel moving. So my point to you is this: if you want to go back and look at that Nick Saban video, and there's other ones by him and other coaches, when you have a culture of high expectation and you have a culture within a team environment where the expectation is to be excellent or elite, those people just simply will not tolerate average or mediocre, and it has its challenges. And you as a coach have to be able to regulate that. So within the book, they have norms for physical activity. And, I thought this was a little bit kind of awkward in terms of how they wrote this out. They talk about social norms have been conducted with teams. Research exists on social norms to enhance physical activity. Research revealed that different types of social norm presentations are associated with increased physical activity. For example, with family norms, descriptive norms, and then you have things like feedback as well. And I thought this was okay, but I thought this kind of was a mooky presentation of really what they're trying to get at. And I think what they're really trying to look at here is like, what are the different influencers that are affecting norms? Family, friends, meaning signs in the building, applications like an app on a phone. This comes down to a conversation of, like I mentioned, you have a culture, you can create a very high level, high functioning culture. It comes down to a conversation of, well, what's your playground and who are your friends and who are you playing with on that playground, right? Nick Saban, I use the example of a bus. He used the example as well of being on a bus. That's part of it. You have to be able to understand how much that context provides influence in terms of norms. So morality and social norms, they're related to team cohesion, don't get me wrong, but you have this conversation regarding pro-social behavior towards a teammate is associated with greater cohesion, and antisocial behavior towards a teammate is associated with less cohesion. So as a coach, you're trying to promote a pro-social behavioral environment where you have this kind of positive relationship between your athletes, and it's never going to be perfect. You're going to have some issues, but when you have issues where it's antisocial behavior between two of your athletes, you may have to intervene as a coach and be able to talk through what is the issue so it doesn't take away from team cohesion. With positive norms, you try to establish this from having a virtuous cycle, and you try to cultivate, desired norms for your group. And to that end, you speak of this in two different terms, one of which is you're trying to recruit and place the right people on the bus who align with those norms, trying to utilize athlete advocates to help infuse positive norms at a granular level, meaning like how do your captains and other people on the team interact with the other players to be able to cultivate a positive environment. And it's a matter of having these different positive norms in place on your team, whether it's on the recruiting side, right, to get the right people in, to have the right, if you will, norms for the group of your team, or beyond that, how that's integrated in and implemented in at a granular level between athletes. So you kind of, again, I say this all the time, as a coach, you control that environment, you control that dynamic, and it becomes, how do you want to do that as a coach? Next video.